Welcome to Soul Whispers Stories, where hidden pain finds a voice and broken hearts begin to heal. Tonight, Lynette shares a story of silent suffering, betrayal, and a truth that changed everything. Stay with us, because some wounds are deeper than they appear.
My name is Lynette, and for years, I carried a name that did not belong to me. It was not written on any official document, yet it followed me everywhere. It was whispered in gatherings, spoken boldly in family meetings, and silently stamped across my identity. They called me Barren. At first, I resisted it. I told myself it was just talk, just pressure, just the impatience of people who did not understand that life unfolds differently for everyone. But when the voices grew louder, or when the looks became sharper, and when even my own home no longer felt safe, I began to believe it. I began to question my body, my worth, and even my purpose as a woman. When I married Manu, I believed I was stepping into a life of love and shared dreams. I did not see marriage as an obligation, but as a partnership, two people building something meaningful together. Manu was kind in the beginning. He spoke softly, treated me with care, and made promises that painted a future filled with joy. He would often say that our home would be filled with laughter and children, and I held on to those words like a sacred promise. The first year of our marriage passed peacefully. There were no questions, no pressure, just a natural rhythm of learning each other and growing together. We spoke about our future, about the children we hoped to have, about the life we were building. It felt stable, it felt real. But as time passed, the silence around children began to attract attention. By the second year, the questions began. At first, they came gently, almost playfully, but beneath them was an expectation that could not be ignored. Family members would ask when we planned to have children, whether we were waiting for something or if everything was okay. I smiled through those moments, reassuring them and myself that everything was under control. However, the tone soon shifted. The questions became more direct, the concern became suspicion, and suspicion quickly turned into blame. My mother-in-law, whom I had once hoped to build a warm relationship with, began to express her disappointment openly. She spoke of how in her family, women did not struggle to conceive. She emphasized lineage, legacy, and continuity, as though these were measures of a woman's worth. Each time she spoke, her words were not directed at both of us as a couple, but at me alone. Her daughter, Anita, took it even further. She did not hide behind politeness or cultural expectations. Her words were sharp, often laced with mockery. She would make comments about women who entered marriages for comfort rather than purpose, about women who failed to build families, and about how time was being wasted. I stood in those moments, present but invisible, listening to my identity being rewritten by people who had already decided my story. That was when the word began to settle into my life with weight. Barren. It was no longer a whisper, it became a label. With that label came pressure, intense, suffocating pressure. I began seeking medical help, not because I was certain something was wrong, but because I needed to prove something, to them, and eventually, to myself. I visited clinics, underwent tests, endured procedures, and waited anxiously for results. Each time, the doctors told me the same thing: there was nothing wrong with me. I should have felt relief, but instead, I felt confusion. If I was medically fine, then why was I not pregnant? Why did the narrative around me remain unchanged? The answer, though unspoken, was clear. It was easier for everyone to continue believing that I was the problem than to consider any other possibility. Manu, my husband, began to change during this time. The man who once reassured me became distant. Conversations became shorter, colder. When I suggested that we both undergo medical testing, he refused without hesitation. His refusal was not just a rejection of the idea, it was a statement that the problem could not possibly be him. This refusal created a silent divide between us. Meanwhile, the pressure from his family intensified. My inability to conceive was no longer seen as a private matter, but as a public failure. Every visit, every conversation, and every gathering reminded me of what I was perceived to lack. Then came a moment that marked a turning point. My mother-in-law suggested that another woman should be brought into Manu's life. The suggestion was not subtle. It was presented as a solution, a practical step to correct what they believed was wrong. I looked to Manu in that moment, hoping he would reject the idea, defend our marriage, and affirm his commitment to me. He remained silent. That silence spoke louder than any words could. Soon after, Anita introduced a woman named Sandra into our lives. Sandra was younger, soft-spoken, and, in their eyes, capable of giving Manu what I supposedly could not. What I later discovered was even more painful. Sandra was not just a suggestion. She was already part of Manu's life. He had been seeing her. The knowledge of this betrayal was devastating. It was not just the presence of another woman that hurt me. It was the realization that I had been replaced while still being expected to remain in place. Despite this, something within me refused to accept the narrative that had been constructed around my life. I returned to the doctor, seeking clarity once more. It was during this visit that I heard the words that would change everything. There was nothing wrong with me. However, fertility, I was told, is not solely a woman's issue. Both partners needed to be assessed. This realization gave me the courage to confront Manu once again. I insisted that we undergo testing together. The conversation was difficult, filled with resistance and conflict, but I did not back down. Eventually, he agreed. The results of those tests revealed the truth that had been hidden beneath years of blame and silence. Manu had an extremely low sperm count. The implications were clear. The problem had never been mine. This truth was both liberating and devastating. It validated the pain I had endured, but it also exposed the depth of the injustice I had faced. Manu had allowed me to carry the burden of blame while he remained silent, protecting his pride at the cost of my dignity. Sandra, the woman brought in to solve the problem, did not conceive either. Over time, her presence became less significant, and the narrative that had once centered around my supposed failure began to unravel. The same voices that had accused me grew quiet. The truth had shifted everything. At this point, Manu and I faced a critical decision: to separate or to rebuild. For the first time, he expressed vulnerability. He admitted that his actions had been driven by fear. Fear of being perceived as inadequate, of losing his identity as a man. We chose to seek therapy. The process was not easy. It required confronting uncomfortable truths, addressing deep emotional wounds, and rebuilding trust that had been severely damaged. There were moments when I questioned whether it was worth continuing, but there were also moments of genuine effort and change. Manu began to take responsibility. He distanced himself from influences that had harmed our relationship and committed to rebuilding what had been broken. Eventually, we decided to pursue IVF as a path forward. The journey was physically and emotionally demanding. It required patience, resilience, and faith. There were moments of doubt, but there was also hope. That hope was realized when I finally received a positive result. The moment I saw those 2 lines, I experienced a release of emotion that I cannot fully describe. It was not just about pregnancy. It was about redemption, healing, and the restoration of my identity. In time, I gave birth to my first son. Later, I was blessed with a second. Today, I am the mother of 2 boys, 2 living testimonies of a journey that nearly broke me, but ultimately transformed me. The attitudes of those around me also changed. My mother-in-law now speaks of my strength with pride, and Anita interacts with me with a level of respect that was once absent. However, while their behavior has changed, the memory of what I endured remains, not as bitterness, but as truth. My experience taught me that silence can be as harmful as words, that assumptions can destroy lives, and that truth, though painful, has the power to restore. To every woman who may be facing a similar situation, I offer this reflection: you are not defined by the labels placed upon you. Your worth is not determined by societal expectations or the opinions of others. Seek truth, stand firm in your identity, and do not carry burdens that are not yours. I pray for every woman going through the same thing. It is not an easy road to walk, but I pray that God will make it happen for you in a way that those who mock you will celebrate with you. Thank you for listening to my story.